You have some abilities to connect to the other side, so you say, correct?
One of my skills, if we want to call it that, is I can see death scenes very easily. And this has been proven because I've been in sessions with people where I was able to tell them the entire scene of like a murder, and it was also then confirmed by the police report. So the way that it comes to me is that I have like imagery. They look like maybe a memory or a dream would, but it's not mine.
And it's clear, it's crystal clear.
Sometimes. I've seen my dad's last moments. Wait, can we just like back up? Can I just tell you, because I think this is insane, how my brother found out my dad died?
Please. What's up, y'all? It's David. Welcome to Dead Talks. Today's episode, I have the lovely Alyssa Conger, who is a psychic medium, and she taps into her abilities, how they were heightened 2 years ago after she unfortunately lost her father when he tragically took his life. She's had these abilities and was aware of her psychic capabilities and connecting to the other side as early as 6 years old. After losing her father, she realized she was able and had to, in her personal opinion, harness this energy, harness this ability to connect to the other side and to help other people. We tapped into what she sees, what she feels, the logistics of being able to understand the other side and connect to deceased loved ones for other people and for herself, and what these psychic events really mean to her and why she's able to do it. It was such a fun conversation. She's hilarious. She's really intelligent, and it was a conversation that I truly enjoyed, and we are going to have her on again. So please, if you do watch this full episode, when you get to the end, please comment your thoughts. If you have any questions you would like to ask her that perhaps I didn't get to, when we do this again, I would love to have some of your answers questioned. Have some of your questions answered, rather. Thank you for tuning in. Per usual, I will stop talking. Let's get into the episode.
My mom's a fan of you. This is for her.
This is for your mom?
Right now, yeah.
That's a new ode. That's a new tribute. Okay, well, hi, Mom. Outside of that, you have some abilities to connect to the other side, so you say, correct?
Yes, I do. They like to call that being a medium.
Okay, yeah, that's one way of saying it.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned to me a couple times, obviously pre-recording and when we've spoke, that those abilities, I always get confused. Should I say abilities? I've said this a million times. I always get confused on how to call it.
I would call it abilities. I think the thing is, abilities makes it seem like it's like maybe more specialized, and I think everyone has the capacity to do this kind of thing to a level. But yeah, you can call them abilities. Got
it. Okay, so it's okay, that's a good way of answering it. And I want to tap into that, of course, about your experiences with those abilities that seem to be heightened, if you will. And you said that was ignited when you lost your father?
So when my dad died, which we'll get into like the full thing, but there's a sequence of events that occurred leading up to it that were like, I guess like downloads, I would call them. And so when he died, it made it so I could no longer ignore that what I had going on was maybe like an amplified experience with like intuitive stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So essentially you're saying you've had this for a while prior to that. So what was it before, and then what did you notice, I guess, after these events we'll get into?
So before, it would be things like as a kid, I definitely saw, like most people who have this kind of thing, they've seen, like you can see like apparitions or like dark things. Then as I grew up, it was more like I would get like a drop of information, like a download. An example would be one time I was like cooking in the kitchen, and I heard in my head, but outside of myself, was like, oh, your brother's going to get in a motorcycle wreck. And then I go up and check my phone, and my brother had just gotten into a wreck.
That was moments before you got this download?
Yeah. So like I got it, and then that would be like a closer like in time. It's like for a time span one. Or I would have things, I'm trying to think, where I would get a drop that my grandpa would be in the hospital in a few days, and then in a few days he would be in the hospital. So it was like smaller things like that. And then I have like bigger things that come through that make me sound like I'm a little more nutty. So we'll be more careful with describing those things.
Careful. Open space.
I think just like things that happen like within the world and experiences that are going on. There would be like big downloads around those kinds of things about like tragedies and stuff, which is pretty normal. So anybody that has an experience like I do or has these kinds of abilities will usually be able to read traumatic events first.
Like worldly events, or?
It depends. For each person, I think it's different. I think big worldly events people can pick up on really easily because if you think about it, it's a really big energetic imprint.
Okay. And so that first example you gave with the motorcycle accident, was that just an example, or was that one of the first times it came through?
Oh, for like first times, I can't really think of like the first time.
That wasn't though. That was just an example.
No, since I was a kid. Here's the first one that I have on the books, and I know this because my mom said it. I was little. And I don't have very many childhood memories because of reasons. But my mom told me that her and my dad were getting a divorce. And I said, yeah, God told me. I already know. And then no one decided to like further question why I would already know.
How old are you?
I think they divorced when I was 6, so it would have been like 5 maybe when she said this to me, and I was like, obviously.
So you just knew, you just
I
intuitively
said, God
knew.
told me that you guys were getting a divorce.
And no one inquired about that. It was just like 6-year-olds saying this.
Yeah, which is fine, but maybe they're just like, okay.
So I feel like you've told me this off the mic. Was it something that at that time, and I guess growing into it, you were like, oh, this is just normal. This isn't something that other people can experience, or am I making
I
that
thought
up?
everyone was experiencing the same thing.
Right. That's what I mean.
Yeah, like I don't know, like your internal world is, I mean, that it's that different from mine in the way that I'm getting information. So I just assumed that everybody was kind of getting like drops about people all the time. So like if I'm sitting at a restaurant, I'm going to say more controlled with it now. But, if someone walks by me, one example that seemed very strong, I don't know why it was. This lady walked by me and she like flicked her hair. And then all of a sudden I see like her and her husband having this big argument in their house. And something like that is hard because I can't ask her to confirm that. I'd be like, hey, were you guys just fighting before you came here? Like, does your bathroom look like this? Because I saw your gold hardware and it's very nice.
Whoa. Wait, so at that point you're seeing other people's spaces?
Yeah, that's kind of how it'll be. So the way that it comes to me is that I have like imagery that feel like they look like maybe a memory or a dream would, but it's not mine.
And it's clear. It's crystal clear.
Sometimes. Yes, it's a flash. So if you try to chase the flash, it goes away.
I feel like I've noticed that, like, when not in a sense of what you can do. I mean, like, if I meditate, I feel like I get these flashes, and then when I'm just trying to understand what you're saying and relate it to me. That's probably nothing like what you feel or see.
It's probably exactly like what I see and feel.
Maybe because that really resonated with me. Like when I do meditate, and even when I did that meditation or however you want to call it, that you told me to give a shot, that I'm going to keep doing. I feel like I was getting. I think I took notes, but I was getting these flashes of just imageries, and whenever I do try to focus on it, I'm like, I lose it.
Yeah, because that's like your analytical mind is coming in and trying to grab something.
So how do you let those images? We're going like in every direction right now. So just stay with us. We'll keep going back to the original topic. But so how do you latch onto those without losing it?
So the best way that I have found is if you can find a flow state sort of with a body part. So if you're like tracing figure eights was one thing that I was taught. Or for me, honestly, I like to use tarot cards, not for the meanings on the cards, but I like to shuffle them. So like the action, the like repetitive motion with my hands kind of creates like a clearer channel.
Interesting.
You might find like if you're driving or if you're in the shower, if you're doing things like washing dishes, you might notice that you get like a flow come in. Like that's when people like creatively might have something that they want to write down or like they want to paint or like solutions to problems. So it's the same kind of thing.
That makes sense. George Anderson was I don't know if he's still active. He was a very mainstream medium like early on when I think if he was maybe one of the first that hit the mainstream. And we got a session with him when I was younger. And I remember he was doing this thing where his hand, for anyone watching on YouTube, he was like a manic, just moving his arm back and forth. And I was like very young at this point, like, what the hell is this madman doing?
Yeah.
And now,
that's that same
later,
thing. I think what's his name? Tyler Henry, the one that's got the Netflix specials and
he
stuff.
does
Like,
that?
he scribbles, so he's like scribbling stuff, and like maybe you're looking for him to draw something, but I think he's doing the same thing where you're just like whatever that repetitive motion is creating that like that flow.
It's like a trance.
It kind of goes to a trance, yeah.
I mean, even when you're driving and you just all of a sudden you go on a straight road forever, and then all of a sudden, like, I didn't remember driving the last 2 miles.
It's like you like meditated.
Interesting. I kind of like that tactic. Okay, so back to these images, and I want to go. So that's how you see it. So any of these, I guess, psychic events, if you will, or even if you're connecting to the other side, you're getting images, and you don't know what they mean, and you have to decipher them.
Yeah, it's images. So there's 5 different, we'll just do it quickly, 5 different senses that you have like in your normal physical body, and you have those as well in the non-physical. So you can receive information the same way. You can hear, taste, smell, see. And you can develop those more, and some people have them better or stronger than others. So for me, I will see and hear things, and then you just know stuff, which that one's a hard one because if you just know stuff, you're like, well, why would I know that? I'm not...
Is this all self-experienced, or have you done any further research for other people that are doing the same thing or reading on it, or is this all stuff that you just download and understand?
I ended up taking I got like a mentor. So like I see somebody like a psychic, and I was talking to her about what was happening for me, and so she's my mentor. And I took a couple of like classes, and that's when I realized I was like, oh, wait a minute, I know what I'm doing. Like, why am I even in here? Because it's not tangible. It's really hard to not have like imposter syndrome. And to know what's going on. Plus, there's a ton of books on it. I have a large library of books on this stuff, just trying to figure it out, because I always thought that if you're seeing a ghost, that you're seeing a ghost in the room, which I think maybe some people can. I don't see like an apparition.
It's all internal.
I did when I was a kid. I don't see them now. It's all internal. And so when I realized that it's a more subtle experience, then I was able to tap in.
Have you ever had at any point, at this point you seem you're very confident with it for the most part. Have you had any moments where you thought it was something else, like you didn't believe it, like maybe there was something as mainstream society would say, oh, there's something wrong with your head, this is BS, or did you always just feel like it was too real to be anything else?
Well, here's this. I'm an egg donor, and I did pass a psych eval, okay?
That was my polite way of calling you crazy, yeah. Congrats.
Thanks.
I think you're great, so it's perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I think for me, nothing was ever so extreme that it would lead me to think it was maybe like a schizophrenic moment.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, some cultures, when someone has schizophrenia, it's actually a shamanic thing. So, but whatever. No, I didn't really take it as any kind of mental illness.
Yeah, no, I wasn't insinuating that. I'm just trying to understand the process of, because again, I have no touch on that. So it's like to be feeling that and seeing that and other people just not understanding. I just feel like it'd be in nature to question it.
It is isolating.
Okay.
I'll say that. Because when like the bigger things come through, like, all right, we'll go here with this one. So before COVID smacked us all down, I had a friend who had passed away, and I was sitting, it was like February something, at his like wake, and I just got this big download of this massive wave, like a tsunami of souls leaving Earth, and I was like, whoa. And it was so vivid in my mind, and I originally attached it to just maybe the grief around my friend leaving, but the way the information came in, it wasn't anxiety filled, it wasn't fearful, it was like, no, a ton of people are going to depart, like a spiritual mass exodus.
Wow.
And then immediately following COVID happened, and if anyone here who is alive currently with us, you do know that people are dying left and right, like crazy all over the place. So like those kinds of downloads, like I told people about it and they're like, you're nuts.
Right.
To which I was like, maybe. However, and like a lot of those kinds of things that come through, there is like a lag time between when I receive it and when it actually happens. So
in every case, because it seemed like the motorcycle story was very quick.
The motorcycle one was pretty quick, but I would say if it's like larger predicted events, or I mean, we won't do it here. This whole like time is not linear thing, and like choices that you make change the trajectory of things. That also will kind of manipulate how things come in. But I would say, generally speaking, right now, like if I have a session with somebody, I would say it's about a 6-month-ish loose leg period between what I see and like what starts to develop.
And that was just like not trial and error, but just having it happen and realizing how much time goes by.
It's just people like contacting me afterwards and being like, "Oh my God, all that stuff that you said is unfolding."
Wow.
So that's been kind of cool, like as we go along to kind of collect that.
No, thank you for explaining all that. It's amazing to me. I mean, so part of me thinks like, damn it, I wish I could. I know you said earlier, I think we all have the ability. I just always wondered why people like you or people that are more tapped in, just it comes more naturally as opposed to having to learn it or
Well, I think that you're
practice.
very intuitive. I just think for some reason you have a belief that you're like not able. So we can work on that. I also teach people how to do this.
Why do you think I'm intuitive? I think I'm intuitive. Why do you think I'm intuitive?
Because look at what your job is.
What's my job?
What is your job?
All right, I'll take it. We'll talk after the mic, so I'm curious where you're going to go on there. But subscribe to my Patreon. I'll get all the details. I'm just kidding. So I now want to tap into, okay, so great introduction. And you did mention again that these abilities, which already seemed heightened, I'm not sure if you're going back and forth between your early life and now, but when your dad took his life.
Yeah, my dad just decided to self-exit. Cool.
Cool. Okay.
His 2-year anniversary is actually this Halloween. So what, 2 weeks from now?
2 weeks from now. Yeah. I mean, when this episode comes out, I don't know when the Monday is close to Halloween, but when you're listening, it'll be closer to that time. So
pouring out for Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin.
Yeah. So I guess to say that they heightened, it was more so that I felt a responsibility to, dare I say, harness them or use them. My abilities. Sorry.
Okay.
Because also I have to say this, because when my dad passed, it was very traumatic. And if you want to, we can get into the story of that. But just like how those two things connect, leading up to it, though the memory is foggy, I remember I kept thinking, I was like, oh, like a father type person near me is going to die. Why do I think that? And I was like, it's definitely gunshot related. And I wasn't asking these questions. I just remember getting these kinds of downloads. And I thought maybe it was going to be my mom's father that was going to pass because he's older and not so healthy. All of these things. And I even said some stuff to my friends. I was like, something's about to happen that's like going to shake my shit up so bad. And I was like, I don't know what it is. And there's more stuff that I kept getting. So when he did it, I was like, oh,
that was it.
I can't be like as frivolous, with this kind of stuff that I'm getting.
What made you feel like a frivolous meaning? Just you really should be paying attention to it more and really realizing the impact of it, because it was just the first outside of the motorcycle accident. Again, this was the big one, if you will. This was such a big experience. So also, I guess some background is that, yeah, my dad is the literal demographic who is affected most by suicide. A middle-aged, late 50s man. But this was such a big event, and he would have been the person I would not have ever thought would do this. We've got other people in my family who deal with this kind of suicidal ideation in a really big way. So when this happened, it was just like a full-blown what the fuck. But like I was clearly getting information to kind of prepare. I don't think it was information to try to prevent it. So I don't feel like I did him a disservice by not like reaching out and trying to help him. What distinguishes that?
I think that I sit in this place with, my dad made a choice. And because he knew how much we had fought for other people in our family who are, close to us, because he knew how much we fought for them to stay alive and they, continue on with not killing themselves. He knew that we would do the same for him. And so I think that he intentionally made sure that was all very boundaried, and then he just handled it. So he made the choice. So I feel a little bit guilty around the fact that right before he did it, I was hard on him about some stuff, which was, I would still lean in on that, but we just didn't have like a very connected moment before he.
And so when all this came through and you had this predictive moment, what did that feel like? Was it like, what was the lingering feeling, or even during it when you got that? I know you kind of tapped into it a little bit, but was it fear? Was it emotions? Or was it just kind of like information?
It's just information. It is almost like the way this stuff comes in, it will be like, your shirt's white. And you're like, okay. Like that's how it doesn't feel. It can be the horrible news, but it doesn't have any of the anxiety attached to it.
That's during the download.
During the downloads.
And then afterwards, is that when you start getting a little more human about thinking about it, or you just let it go?
Well, that's why, because I was like, what feels so weird? Like, why? I could just tell. I was like, there's something. It was like this like impending feeling of something going to shift really big, and I wasn't quite sure how to attach these two things, the like downloads versus this feeling that was happening.
Well, so what's your opinion on the like? What would you say the purpose of getting some of this information early is, or even in your specific example? Let's just stick to your specific example just to make it more accurate. Like, why? I don't want to make it existential as to why you have these abilities. Well, we could get into that as well. But in regards to getting information early, and you kind of use the word preparing you, is that it? Like, why, what's the benefit of knowing this early if you're saying you shouldn't have to step in and change things? Like, what is that?
So I wouldn't say with all cases, like, don't step in. I think in this particular one, that's just not like what was attached to it. Okay, I want to be careful with like how I state this, only because disclaimer, I do not, what is the word? Condone suicide. I don't think that that's the way to do things. However, a lot of people, I think, say that suicide is like, taking like God's stuff into your own hands and doing that whole thing, and that like it's not part of, if you subscribe to this whole thing, that's not part of the contract for this life. I don't agree, because suicide is such a catalyst for everyone around you, and it changes so much in the life. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm not saying do it.
Right.
I am saying that if you can take, as a person who's experienced someone else losing, horrific pain and grief, but that kind of action creates so much shift and change, for better or for worse. Like, there's some people where they are affected by this and it goes really bad. So I think these downloads are coming in because I fully know, and this is so like woo of me. Ugh.
This is
no, this like what I'm going to
conversation. What the hell are you going to say next?
Okay. I guess this is an imposter syndrome thing. I should say, I know that part of what I am meant to do or purpose related is taking the intangible and making it tangible. So that way, like, I want your like average construction worker to understand that they are more connected than just like this like very
meat sack
world, right?
Yeah.
And so that's my goal, is to like, it's not just so everyone can talk to dead people. It's not all that, but it's just that there's more information available and there's a different way to live than how we've been living. And when you're like tuned in with that, you're making choices from that center. And imagine if the whole world was making choices from that place, we would be in a very different situation. Do I think I'm going to change the world? No, but maybe the people around me. So because of that, this wouldn't have kicked off in the way that it had if my dad didn't do what he did. And so those downloads had to happen for me to understand what was occurring for me, because my dad did what he did because he was living from a place that was entirely shut off from any kind of connection to anything outside of his meat sack.
It's a meat sack. Yeah, I'm sorry I said that. I always say meat sack. I mean, and it's ironic again because I was listening to something on the way here and I was just talking about the invisible world, and everything, all the laws of nature, everything is just dictated by this invisible world. Yet whenever these conversations come up, it still seems to be a split decision on people believing in because they need facts, this or that. I've said it a million times. But is your understanding of tapping into that invisible world, because you also, like, is it all good? Like, the reactions and the responses, I think our human choices make it one way or the other. Like you said, like someone took his life and then it could do really good for other people, or it could go the other way. That's like a human choice we make where it might not be good.
Yep.
But if we're pulling from the source, if you will, is that source good? Is it just good?
I think it's neutral.
And it's neutral until we define it?
Yeah. The experience I think we have as humans is what what defines good or bad.
Right.
I think the energy in its totality is neutral.
Okay. But for argument's sake, just have fun with it.
Okay. Defining
that neutrality from a human perspective, is it good?
I think I would say if you work with it, it's good. I think it is good because it is a tool and it is part of like life and life's like whole energy. So I would say that it's better to engage with it than it is to not.
Got it.
Does that answer?
No, of course, that makes sense. And obviously you can engage with it any way you want, and therefore you can engage with it in a bad way, just like life.
I think it kind of starts like where it can like get a little sciencey in the fun way, and people I'm sure are going to be like, you don't know what you're saying. But it's kind of like that quantum thing, like what you give attention to is like what you either call in or like draw to yourself. And so, where are you sending your energy? Is it good or is it bad?
So since your father died, do you communicate with him?
Yeah, so I get that question a lot, and not really. And it's very hard for me to, because also part of the way that you get information is you feel it, or I personally, it feels very like emotional, and it also, because it looks like memories to me, I have a very hard time discerning between what's my memory and what is something from my dad.
And do you think that's intentional, where maybe there's, if we're talking about that neutral energy, like perhaps even with you, with your gifts and abilities, have the ability to do it, there is, I want to say a limit, but maybe there's a control from the invisible world. Like you just don't need to, there's no service to that. You don't need to.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I think some people have a better time. Some people I think are very good at connecting with like their ancestral lines and all of that. The reason why I don't think that there's any kind of like boundaries put in place intentionally is because when one of my skills, if we want to call it that, is I can see death scenes very easily. And this has been proven because I've been in sessions with people where I was able to tell them the entire scene of like a murder, and it was also then confirmed by the police report. So like I've got that on lock. Now, for better or for worse with that is that I've seen my dad's last moments. So there was not a boundary around that in seeing.
Why do you think that is?
Why did I see it, or why is there no,
like, it seems like you're saying there was a boundary around just communicating with him, but there's no boundary around that. Do you ever give reason to it, or it just is?
Yeah, I think maybe because when it first happened, we were, as you know, the story around my dad's death is insane beyond just the suicide. So we were looking for a lot of answers, and I kept getting flashes of how it was like how he did it. But then moving forward, so like when he first did it, it's kind of like I'm more in shock. I'm just kind of like, what the hell just happened? Afterward now, like my grief has been more just like, damn, like my dad dipped out, and it's someone that I have all these emotional things with now that are very sad, and like I wish my dad would talk to me and all these things, and because I want so badly to know this, that's why I can't link the communication. The desire to link is what's making it hard for me to do it. It's not that it's not happening, it's that I can't discern the difference.
So is it releasing the desire?
Yeah, I think, which I don't really know if that's possible at this current point.
According to the Tao Te Ching, that's what we're supposed to do, is releasing the desire.
Yeah,
if I understood that wrong, that makes sense. I think that I was making it back to a selfish reason of me like thinking about that with my dad. I've always felt like this block that I've discussed before, and I feel like that block is the desire to want it to happen, and that's what I need to woe away. I've always without any real specific intention I feel like I have something to let go of, but I haven't defined what it is I have to let go.
I would say potentially, because this is what it is for me, is that let go of the fear of disappointment that he's not going to communicate with you.
Yes. Fuck. Yeah, okay.
Because like I don't reach out to my dad because I don't want to be met with silence, and silence is the exact way that my dad liked to parent and not be around. So
well, I mean that, and at the same time, my dad wasn't silent, but I think it's been so long where I feel like, and again, I shared that message that woman messaged me, like some other medium that didn't ask for money and just gave me a message. Haven't heard from her since, and then that you validated in your own sense. It's interesting that you say, let go of the disappointment. It's like it's been so long. So it's like maybe I'm, I've already, not I want to say I'm disappointed, but it's been so long that like I thought I'm like, okay, but it hasn't happened.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that like still like little boy you wants like your dad to show up.
Yeah. And little boy David. Yes.
And in a sense now in real intangible life, like dad's not going to show up. And so there already is kind of like this built-in expectation of it not happening. I think.
Enough about me.
Let's get into it. Let's break it down.
I think you did just break it down. You're like shattering my world right now in the best way possible. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're going to get back. I want to get back to, your experience with your father and how that drove everything. And it's on this path now. So I don't want to make it completely about my dad, even though I'm wearing a Dead Dad Club hat. So what does it all mean to you? Like,
what does it all mean?
Yeah, what does it all mean,
Basil?
Basil?
Likes to ask that every day. What death mean? What part of it all?
Well, I guess I want to ask you in regards to these experiences of connecting to the other side, because I feel like you've tapped into a lot of psychic stuff.
Yep.
What is the difference between that and then connecting to the other side and connecting to deceased people?
Okay, so this is always like a working definition of what this is for me, because I think that I'm open to, like, it can be any. I don't care how it's actually defined. The way that I perceive it all at this point, the way that I've defined it, is that there's just this big cosmic soup that's all around us, and I'm literally reaching in and I'm pulling out the data and then translating it. So I'm sending out the intention to connect with, your dad or someone else's lost loved one, and then that intention like kind of like pinpoints this like data pile, I guess, and then I'm reading that. Some people would call it maybe the Akashic records, and the way I visualize it is if there's like layers, like all these like, I don't know, maybe like frequency layers that exist all around us at the same time. And so each of those layers kind of can hold different pieces of information.
And how do you tap into certain how do you, for instance, if we did a session or Joe Schmo did a session, is there a different tactic per person to tap into a different frequency, or is all of our people that we lost on the same frequency?
I don't know. I think the way that I just do it, so that if I have a session with somebody, I love to have a photo, but I don't have to. And I'll just, I guess, like in like a light meditation space, like I'll just kind of like drop in for a minute. I get my journal and I'll ask, Bob to come through and like, Bob, what do you have for me? For me, the way that it works also, which is important, this is how I kind of like fine tune it, is it's easier for me to read for someone who has passed if the person who wants to talk to them is with me. Not because I'm fishing, but because it's like if I find the thread, it's like clicking open a file and then it opens. So like I need to know, like, does this piece of information I'm getting make sense to you? If it's yes, then that like further connects it.
God, okay. So like I said, at the same time, you're interpreting data.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't know anything about the person that's asking for the reading, you're limited information, so you kind of just explaining what you see.
Like I'm like cool. Like I'm seeing like daffodils and like there's this car accident that's happening. It looks like Easter and that could be, but also could just be like some like Catholic baptism. I don't know. Yeah. Like.
And also, I just got a flash of your your death scene. So I do want to get back to that. I just want to put a pin in that again because I came up, I just grazed over that. But in regards to what has there been a more any personal, profound experience through someone else's reading that stands out to you that even you maybe shocked yourself, or any specific stories that stand out?
Anytime I do a reading, I shock myself.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Just because every single time I'm like, because it is just like we're just doing this thing, and like
it's insane.
Yeah, and so it's very cool. It is. I keep all my like clients very private, but there just was one in particular where there was a murder, and it was really brutal. And I knew that there was a murder, but then I went through this whole thing, and I was able to describe all the like, what I want to say, like the logistical things of the murder that were in the police report. But then on top of that, I was able to then connect what that person who was dying was thinking and saying in that moment, and what had happened with the other person who committed the murder. So those are like filling in the gaps for the person who was reaching out.
So you got the murder scene, the logistics of the crime scene accurate. And that was confirmed by your client. Mm-hmm. And then the gaps in between, just so I understand where you felt what their like last moments were.
So I guess I'll give it this way. It was like a mother and a child, and then the person committing the crime. Right. And so the mother is who dies. And in this moment, because we were able to confirm with the police report, I'm like, I know I'm looking at the right thing. And because it feels the same, I'm looking at the information. I'm like, okay, well, this is what's happening in your mom's mind, and this was being said. This is what is occurring between the two of you guys when you're a child. And so
what is that? What did you feel like? Is that it's scary? Is it like
it's not scary,
just looking
but
at the white shirt,
I'm feeling what's happening.
You feel it?
Yeah, like I could feel the mom's like fear and like like her knowing of what's happening right now, and like knowing it's the end.
How do you digest that afterwards? Like you're just able to let it go and be like, that's what it was, and just.
I actually after that one, I had to call in some like reinforcements with some of like my mentor type people, because the vibes were so whack.
That's a little whack.
They were really, really whack. I will say I've had to work a lot better, like get my like spiritual hygiene up, because I can be a little too casual with it, where I'm just like, yeah, we're just reading, we're just like calling in stuff all the time, and then I'm like, vibes are off.
Right. And how does that make the client feel? Like, is it a mixed bag of knowing that? Is that details that they want to know? Are you careful of what to tell them, or you just get how does that work?
Before I sit down, especially if it's like a heavier scene like that, I'll ask them, like, do you want to know all of this stuff? Like, do you want me to like dive into what I'm seeing fully? I asked this person that as well. I was like, I can tell you in full, or I can reel it back. And they wanted to know. Let's see. Like I want to know. I always want to know. One second. I think I'm going to
sneeze. God bless you.
Nope.
Are you taking your shoes off?
No, I'm not taking my shoes off.
There's a lot of shuffling going on down there.
It's because my pants are a little tight. And
anyway, thanks for being on this episode of Dead Talks.
Shit.
Shit.
Yeah, I don't. So I will always just be mindful and ask if someone wants to see all that stuff. I have always found that, I think this is actually a trauma response, but I want to know the nasty details. I want to know everything. I really wanted to see a picture of my dad's scene. I really wanted to see my dad's body. I didn't get to see any of it.
Why do you think you wanted to see that?
Because it didn't make sense that he did it. Like, he didn't talk to me for 2 weeks before he did it, because he had married a strange woman from the internet, and she's a succubus, whole thing. You want to talk about like spiritual attachments? She's one. And he just wasn't speaking to me for 2 weeks after he married this lady, and so when he died, I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And like the police were really weird. He had told 3 pastors that he was going to do it, and they were being really weird. Like, everyone was so shifty in this little town that I was like, someone needs to show me that this is my father. I didn't get a photo of him after he had been taken to the morgue. And I begged. I was like, someone just take a picture, because you guys are going to cremate him. And this doesn't make any sense to me that this is my dad. I can't get down there. The wife is doing weird shit.
Why couldn't you get down there?
It was like happening really, really quickly. Like, it was in like within 2 days. And also it was like, it was just a weird like whirlwind of things that were occurring in this time. The woman that he had married was, she's like a con artist. And so we didn't realize what was going on at first. But then basically like 2 days after his death, he was already being cremated. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go down to Tennessee anymore, because my dad had like how all of his stuff in like this weird apartment. I don't know. It just didn't like, it's not like he has an estate. He didn't have things. And like she had just taken his ashes. She had sent us a fake suicide letter. And I guess maybe we should have gone down to see them. But it like in the moment this is all happening, it wasn't making sense to go.
So was she involved in the process of after he took his life? Was she there to expedite things so things weren't found out? Like, was she involved in that?
I think so. I mean, it was all expedited. It happened really quickly. So he died. They said, I had to call the detective. And I was like, hello? Like, what's going on here? Wait, can we just like back up? Can I just tell you, because I think this is insane, how my brother found out my dad died?
Please.
I think he has it the worst experience. This is horrific. So my dad and brother had been living together 6 days prior to this. And my dad was moving out to go live with the wife. My brother worked at a grocery store, a big chain store that we all know. And it was Halloween. He was in a costume. My brother has a Ring camera at his house. And my brother and dad had gotten in a fight that morning. So my brother's girlfriend walks up to my brother, and on their cell phone is 2 detectives standing at the door. And my brother thinks that my dad called for a wellness check on him. So he's like, what the fuck? And they say, say his name. And he's like, yep. And they're like, we just found your father deceased in a church parking lot. That was it. Ugh. And they just told him that it was self-inflicted.
Oh, man.
Can you imagine? Like, it gives me like chills. Ooh, if I could like break a nose, it would be that detective. I hope he listens to this. You know who you are.
That's I mean, there's no gentle way to put it. Like, what? You know what
I was like, go sit down.
Yeah.
Hey, you need to come home. Literally anything like that? No. Just like your dad's dead, shot himself.
How does your brother digest that?
Not well.
No?
No.
Has there been a big difference in the way you've grieved and he's grieved?
Yeah, I'm very clearly public with it.
Well, I mean, also with your personal experiences and what you can do. I was just wondering how that affects your personal grief story.
Yeah, I think it's actually, to be honest, it feels like 2 different worlds, kind of. It feels like, one, I'm a person whose dad committed suicide, and I'm still just like a girl that wants her dad, and this fucking sucks, and it like really hurts. And I also feel that my dad and I are very similar. So when I'm like this person that, not that there's like separation, but I felt like my mom and brother were very similar, and that my dad and I were similar, and that like he and I solved problems in the same way, and they did in their way. And so when he did this, I was kind of like, bro, you just like left me out to dry. And now like in the way that I process the world, I'm alone. And then my brother and dad had their own separate relationship, and they were, living together at the time in this whole thing. And so I just think that there's that end where it's just a kid grieving their dad for both of us. And then I think for me, I don't want to say that like I've just like used it in a different way in my life. Like it's become a part of my life, and my brother has kind of just kept it more like away. Yeah, that's you.
It's a scam likely.
You're popular.
Said, yeah, I'm a scam artist. Literally scam likely.
See, it's
Sorry,
a sign.
My phone's ringing right now.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers that question.
No, it does. And I mean, my clarification with that or interest is specifically with your abilities and the knowledge that that in your belief based on what you've seen and experienced that are others, they're still here in many ways in a different level or different dimension, if you will. So does knowing that give you, like, how does that blend in with the world that we live in today? Because that exists, but you still feel the human pain of just missing out on these experiences with your father and XYZ. Mm-hmm. So how do you blend those two? Is it helpful? Is it just the same human pain? Like, how does it help or hurt your grief?
I think it helps because there is a part of me that maybe feels more connected to him, whether or not we're not having like conversations than I did before. Like, even if I feel like I can't communicate with him, I know that we do have like a tether. So that part is there. And I don't actually know what my brother's experience is on that stuff.
Is that something you talk about?
We have like pretty limited communication, not for any like other reason than we're both like 1-word texters. And he's coming to visit me in a couple weeks. I'm gonna burp from this coffee.
It's okay, let it out. Thank you, Blue Bottle, for gassing up this podcast.
Just letting it all out.
Hey, we're comfortable in here. Doors closed, right?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the nature of your relationship as opposed to being open and talking about it.
Yeah, like when he's here, we'll maybe talk about it some. But I think for me, processing my pain out loud was easier. And for him, I think it was just a quieter internal experience.
Do you feel the need? Do you have any desire to want to talk about it? How do you feel about it?
To talk about my dad's death or like the grief?
I guess individually and with your brother, just in general, like just talking about it, do anything for you?
Talking about it does things. Okay, like here's an example. So I'm on my like Instagram and stuff. I talk about it a lot. I've like calmed down most of the year, but you know, it's October, so we're getting into it. And I had someone reach out to me, and this happens a lot where they're saying, because you've shared your story about your dad, I didn't kill myself.
Wow.
And so in those ways,
yeah,
I've done
huge.
it. And I've decided to talk about it a lot because when he did this, I realized, I was like, wait a minute, everyone keeps this like suicide thing under wraps so much because it's such a taboo thing to do. And there's so much shame around doing it that at least me at this point, like I hadn't really experienced somebody having like out loud grief around suicide and like what is happening in someone's world before they do it. And like suicide in my family is a theme to a degree. And there's been more since my dad did it, actually. So like processing out loud, I think is important because like we can get into like men's mental health and like the advocacy around that, I think is really important. Because y'all are offing yourselves left and right. So stop it. Seriously. That'll drive me nuts. You guys have to knock it off. Whatever. I'm going on a tangent.
No, tangents are good, but I mean, I agree with the men's mental health. Obviously everyone's mental health matters, but in regards to the men's thing, it is, and I've said it before. It's like the people that follow this podcast. Sounds like YouTube. It's majority women. It's like 75% women, 25% men. And I always like think about that. And me as a man being the host of the podcast, excuse me, I always was hoping it would get, I think it's slowly moving, but get men to just be a little more weary of talking about it. I'm not saying talking about it is always the answer. But I think the nature of men, as we see it societally, is just to keep that shit inside, be a man, and don't this, that, and the other. So it's not a coincidence you're saying what you're saying.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like a lot of my clients. So like, yes, I do like my mediumship stuff, but I also just do like I call it like intuitive guidance. So like, but it's all mostly women. And I did a test run where I did this container for men, which I understand I'm a woman, so like it's a little bit tricky to do that. But I was trying to like offer something that I think men would be able to tap into a little bit. And I got rape threats.
What?
Like it just evoked such rage in a lot of men that like I would be like, hey, do you want to open this door to like talking about these things? And not everybody. Some people responded really well to it, but I was like, okay, like this hill is a really big one to climb. And to offer support to men and their mental health, I don't know the way through. And I wish that they would like listen to stuff like your podcast more. They just don't.
Yeah, I don't have the answer.
They don't feel safe to do it.
And that's my thought. I mean, there's probably a million different angles. Like I know there's other groups out there that are men's focused, which I think help, but it's just cracking that first veil. And I'm hoping it's having other men talk. Like,
I think so.
I mean, I think it's one the easiest, the low hanging fruit, and I hope it just to show that it's okay and opening up. So I think it is a big deal. I don't know what it is. It's this primal evolution of men to have to not this that. Like, it's harder to. So I guess sometimes it is harder to express it and say it than almost hold it in.
Yeah, so my mom's gonna punch me. She doesn't punch me, but.
Just to clarify. Go on.
No, we laugh but it is dark. My family has what we call our container thoughts now. A friend of mine also coined this container thoughts. And it's this moment where like, okay, we're going to go there with it, but it's helpful. Where like you say the really bad thought and we say like, hey, like, I'm just going to like let you know something right now. I was like, this isn't a threat. This isn't an actionable thing I'm going to tell you. I was like, but like right now, this is coming up for me. And you say, and that could be like, I want to blow my fucking head off. And that is an intense way to do it. But it does seem to at least it's not festering inside of you.
Yeah, it's a real physical release.
It's a real physical release. And like when we frame it in the like, I'm just saying it because I need to get it out. And it's within the safety of the like understanding that we're communicating about it. Then that like thought process kind of actually goes away. Because it's often that I don't think people, when they're in, like have these like ideations, I don't think that it's because they actually want to do the thing. I think it's because it gets like snowballing, and you go, like whatever the pressure of life for men or for anyone, and that like you feel like caged in and like you're getting suffocated.
Yeah, I think it could be even just intrusive thoughts. Like everyone gets those weird thoughts, and like you're maybe ashamed to say, "Is like, why is that coming through?" Sometimes it's like looking at traffic. Sometimes these thoughts just go through, and you do got to release it. So you call them container thoughts.
It's container thoughts.
I like that.
And that's just like a safe space where we're like, all right, like we're cool, and then afterwards you're like, yeah, we're good, and it's like fine, and like you can like move along and like chuckle. Now, if someone was listening to our phone calls or this podcast, they're like, girl, it's not normal to say that, and I want to say like, I think it's actually pretty normal to feel a lot of these things, especially in society today. Yeah. That you're feeling, or not want to say feeling, you're getting these thought patterns that are really intense and really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what's right anyway? Like even when you brought up, wanting to see what happened to your dad and really see it, I couldn't relate more. I've got some obviously different experiences, but like I never saw my dad's body. I don't really know what happened at like inside. I've always wondered that, and like my exposure therapy was to constantly like the only thing I did have was footage of 9/11,
right?
Obviously, and I watched that. I can't even count how many times I rewatched the footage and like trying to look for different angles of that day, and then looking at the building go down, constantly like replaying the plane going in, thinking of what my dad was doing, where was he, what was he feeling, this, that, and the other. And I don't even know. I guess the easy thought is just to get answers, I guess.
I think your brain's just trying to like put the puzzle pieces together.
Without like, an end. Like I'm not gonna know.
You're not gonna know.
Unless I talk to you.
I was gonna say we can try to tap in. But like I was Googling man in car, gunshot wound, left side of the head, Hyundai Veloster. And like I was like scrolling until I could find something that like look, and there's a picture of a guy that didn't look like my dad, but the setting was the same. And I was like, okay, that must be kind of what it actually looked like. Also, I was trying to see if like the vision I was getting of my dad in my head was real. And like also the feelings that come along with what he was doing. But yeah, I think it's our brains trying to find answers to something that we just can't really have the answers to.
So with your dad, I feel like you might have said it already, but you do have a hard time deciphering, am I seeing it or is this just my imagination creating it? Mm-hmm. Specifically with him. But with other situations, it seems to be like unbiased, just you see it.
Yeah, and also because I can confirm with somebody else because, if it's someone else's scenario, like I have no reason to know it or to attach to it. And I can tell it'll come in immediately, or if I'm trying to connect with my dad, I can say like I can sort of tell when it's happening. I should give you this background as well, which I think is funny because this has come up with multiple different psychics that I've worked with and who have worked with my mother who didn't know my dad's way of being. My dad, with me specifically, which irks me, the same way that he was in life, and he told his coworkers this as well, is she's fine. She's got it together. I don't need to bother with her. like he doesn't need to like be present because he feels secure in my ability to manage my life, which I was like, that's not how you need, that's not how this works. And so some mediums that I've worked with, they have said similar, they're like, oh, your dad like pops in and out occasionally just to kind of like see what's up. And like, I know this with my dad when he died, because we would always butt heads because he was very religious. And I was like, Dad, don't you see that it's all connected? And we would always just like, and I know that he was like, oh shit.
Now she's right. He
knows that I'm right. And I know that he'll like come in occasionally, but he also has in death had the same kind of attitude towards me where he's like, oh, you're good. I don't really need to like pop in that much. And I've just had that confirmed with so many other people. And then also my own confirmation. So I was like, all right, my dad just isn't that present with me.
As a soul.
Yeah, he's like doing other stuff.
So does that mean you take it less personally, like as opposed to like a soul contract type thing where you're like, okay, or
no, it's still hurtful. I
was gonna say, yeah, it's still.
I'm still like, dude. Yeah. I was like, I'm still whatever. Also.
How do you deal with that?
Have a little fit in a podcast room and
container thoughts.
Yeah, I think I have to like find some humor in it. That I'm like, of course, even when my dad dies, he is still the same motherfucker.
Yeah.
He was a good man. He just had some stuff. Okay, he had lots of stuff. You don't kill yourself if you don't have stuff. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with any of that.
No, it all made sense. And I again, it's so fascinating to me in regards to processing it all, knowing what you know. Like I believe in it. Again, I haven't had these experiences, but it's just a totally different perspective to be able to balance both worlds, to be able to see that side, still manage this side, but also the understanding that with what you see, you're still dealing with human things just like anybody else. Like, it's not magic.
I think something that's important to know, like they did a study on this with like the top psychics and mediums, is that even the best were only correct about 75% of the time, because you're still operating through a human lens. So it's still my own traumas, stories, behavioral things, and understanding of the world that's translating it.
Right.
So I can't be 100% correct all the time. Also, it's not like you're like, it's all intangible stuff. So that just being said, I think also creates room for the humanness to really come in when it's a personal experience.
Yeah, you're still human at the end of the day. You're not
Turns out
a psychic robot.
I tried rolling in clover when I was a kid so that way I could sprout wings, and it never happened.
Yeah, I still believe in you. We got time. We'll do it outside of Spotify right now, 5 minutes. So listen, I know you have a casting coming up, so I want to get you out of me respectful of your time. But the last thing I want to ask you real quick is, with the psychic stuff and then connecting to the other side, do you get downloads of just generalities of what's going on the other side and what the transition is like and what's going on?
A little bit. So I think some people have a better grip on that than I do. Because what gets in my way, or the skepticism, I don't want to say, my critical mind also kind of believes that everything is happening all the time, all at once. Like it's all occurring. So
Non-linear.
Yeah, it's non-linear. There's like, it's all this stuff. We're little particle blobs that just kind of like disperse.
Particle blobs in a meat sack.
Yeah. So on the other side of this, I do think, and like what I feel is there's this moment of, and this is kind of like what I've touched on with a lot of people, also other people who have committed suicide. I think there's this moment of processing, I should say around traumatic death. There's a moment of processing for them where they have to understand kind of like what just happened. And like, I'm no longer in this thing. And I think that if I'm going to go like the full woo-woo side of my beliefs or what I think happens is I do think you have to process through a lot of the like kind of karmic shit. And you can either do that in like the like ethereal realms, or you can come back and like repeat life. Like if my dad wants to come back and do this all over again, he's going to do it all over again.
The same thing.
Same shit. Maybe different players, but he had a pretty rough upbringing and all that stuff. So, he'll do that whole story again. And it's like, are you going to make the same exit? Don't know. Now, I don't know if I can't like put my stamp on that as being 100% true. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's like a resting period. It seems a lot of times I'm like, animals always show me these, like, because I can read for dead animals as well.
Oh, that's another part 2. Okay. She left that part out. I should have asked.
I mean, if you exist, you like have an energetic imprint, so right. You can kind of like, you can read into all of it, but like there's always this kind of space of like restfulness I think that you can eventually get to. I don't know that it happens immediately for everybody. I kind of believe that like the energy resonance with which you die is also where you kind of like pop up in the ethereal world. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So like in a traumatic death, you have to, or like, I don't want to say like the death itself, but like where your heart, or like where you kind of like, if you're a really shitty person and you're doing horrible things and you're living in like really muck, you bet your buns when you die, you're coming up in like your version of hell that you created. Like that's right. What I think hell is. And I do think that can go away. I don't think you're stuck there forever, but like where you resonate is where you resonate.
Do you believe in past lives?
Yeah, but they're all also still happening all the same time.
So it's all happening. So yes.
But yes.
And do you believe, like, do you have the intuition to tell if you've connected with the soul and other parts of like other lives?
I was just talking to someone about this the other day, which I think is kind of fun. I have started to realize like when I meet somebody and I'll get flashes of kind of this like, oh, we've done a version of this before, and I can kind of see little pieces of it. I'm not very good with like the past life readings. That's just not my, like, I've not like latched in super hard with that. But you probably know it when you meet somebody and you're like, oh, this is not a first time around 100%. Kind of thing. I will not put it on this episode because it'll take too long. But like I have quite the like expansive explanation of how I think everyone is connected and the layers that they all experience together, and like pods that you come down with versus like neighboring pods.
Like pods mean like clans?
kind of like, there's just like people that I would say that are like woven into like the same fabric as you. Like you like resonate in the same, you are the same. And then there's like adjacent ones that are really close and like familiar, but they're not of the same kind of thing. And like basically it all to me shows like like a quilt. Yeah. With like its quadrants and like its layers of stuff, but
still the same quilt.
Still the same quilt. No, I'm not on drugs right now.
You got a casting and a class to teach right after this, so just warming you up right now.
Got stuff to do. I hope we covered stuff that you at least found mildly interesting. We hardly even touched on the actual deaths.
I know there's so much to cover. I feel like we went. I'm gonna have to have you on again, and but I want to thank you for taking this time to open up. I personally find this stuff. I'm so interested in it all, which is why I wanted to speak with you on the mic. To share your story with other people. And for anyone listening, if you're listening to on a platform where you can comment, I don't know, please do. And if you have any other thoughts or questions, I would love to maybe do this again and tap into some of your questions that I didn't cover, because we can go on a different angle.
Yeah, that'd be so fun.
So I think we can do that. And then I'll put it in the show notes or all her socials and whatnot so you can find her. But if you want to drop any more information on yourself, you can do that now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm pretty unorganized, but I just have a landing page at hellowhosaidthat.com, and that's got all my other stuff. Hellowhosaidthat.com.
That's a clever name. I actually didn't even know you had that.
Because I don't tell people because it looks like crap.
Oh, perfect. Go to her crappy website if you want any more information on her. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Until next time, and I guess stand by for part 2. That'll come at some point. Happy Halloween in case it comes out around then. Okay.
Happy Halloween. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dead Talks. Please do not forget to hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. That'll give you updates as to when we post a new video, more episodes, and more content in general. We are streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all that. And also find us on Instagram at Dead Talks Podcast or www.deadtalks.net. Thank you so much.